how to make a pitch, but really what I'm talking about is telling a story. I assume all of you have a little story in your head that you want to tell. You want to tell it to someone, maybe it's a blog or a podcast or a newspaper or something, but you want to tell a story. That's what we're going to talk about. Be a founder, we're in San Francisco. Maybe there's a company. I know there's a couple companies I've already talked about here that people want to talk about. Think about a story that you want to tell. There's someone you know that might want to tell a story like this. And this is what we're going to talk about today. What about this? What about global warming? I don't know. Cannabis use, collective consciousness, veganism, gun ownership, pick your poison here. Longevity. I just went down a huge rabbit hole with longevity, by the way, this week. The gender wage gap. Or maybe you work for a company, a foundation, an advocacy group. You think you could be part of a bigger conversation. What this conversation really means is, where do you want to be placed? How do you want to create a conversation? How do you want to change perception? And where are you going to do it? Maybe you just discovered an illness. A cure to an illness, not an illness. Don't discover that. If you do, undiscover it and then find a cure for it and then tell a story about it. Or maybe you're just curious, like this guy. Look at this guy. Doesn't that make you happy? I saw this and I had to put it in here. So that's what we're going to talk about in this presentation today, is really thinking about storytelling as not a manufactured robotic process, but something that's more powerful. But you have to do something first. You have to figure out one thing. And there's going to be a cat on the next slide that's going to tell you exactly what that one thing is. Wait for it.
No.
Why? Why does anyone still use this font? Are you telling your story? And this is what you have to start with anytime you tell a story, is why do you actually, why? Why does it matter? Who cares about it? This is why you tell a story. You change or shift or crystallize an opinion. You explain why a company or person will change the world. How? You bring awareness to an unknown topic that you think, this is key, that you think should be known. That's why you tell a story. Okay, now you have to find your why. But how? How do you do this? You see in newspapers, you see all these publications, but it's like, how do you get from step A to step B, to publish? Easy. Find a friend, get a newspaper. I know a presenter that was just here doing some of this. Go to the New York Times, go to Twitter, Medium, Quora, talk to anything. This is the real thing that people don't realize. Anyone can tell a story. You go anywhere. You can talk to your friends, your peers, anyone with relevant experience. And this is the test you have to apply. So what? So you've got the why, and then you have why does it matter? And this is what really matters for any journalist, anyone who's writing any blog post is, so what? Why would a human being care about it? And this is the next piece. And this is where you come to finding the right person, the right reporter, and the right publication. Okay, I went with Google, or you can go DuckDuckGo, or whatever your privacy concerns are, or Twitter, or any of these other things. But you research who you want to talk to. And then you research and you reach out. So you find who you want to talk to, you find out what publication you want to talk about. This is very simple. I'm trying to simplify this process. And then you reach out, like this cute little girl, to this robot. Okay, how? Brevity, clarity, value. If you're emailing someone or just simply doing the tactical piece of this, and this is where I'm just taking you from concept to very tactical. You email and then you just tell a story. You're effectively selling someone on something you want to tell them. And this is what the success looks like. This is the end. Okay, I'm going to be honest here. I don't know what you guys wanted to see, but imagine what your story would be here. What would be that image? What would be your headline? What do you care about? Is it global warming? Is it inspiration? Who knows? So let me repeat. You decide to tell a story. You know why it matters. You test the thesis. You do your research. You reach out. It's super simple. What's hard is doing the pitching and emailing and doing that. But all you really have to do is, if you hit all those, you stay positive, have some inspiration, and then you're good. That's it. Questions? I can be more granular and give you more tactics on this. Yes?
Super practical question. You said subject line. Think of what you want the headline to be. If you know exactly what you want the headline to be, or at least you can dream it up, is that too on the nose if you're contacting a journalist? Will he basically be like, okay, it's going to be anything but that?
It's a really good question. I have two responses to that. You can go and say, you can put exactly what you want it to be, or you can think about how many emails someone will probably get. Let's say you're going and actually talking to the New York Times. That's a pretty substantial ask, you want them to open the email because they get so many emails a day. So you kind of do a little teaser to it, but you don't want to be inaccurate. I mean, I did one earlier this week. I won't bore you guys with like the technical ones, but you try to compare it and get someone to like open it and use like a big player. Maybe it's like a tech company or it's a big theme about global warming, and then you want them to say, "Wow, that actually matters." So yes, you want it to be the headline, but you want it to be something that honestly that's like clickbait. Does that feel good? No. But like, it works. Yeah.
What is it that you're doing with writing?
With writing?
Where are you published?
Oh, I'm not
No,
published.
I'm not asking where you're published. Like, what are you doing with your storytelling? And
Oh, sure, yeah. So with I did this because this is what I do for work. So I actually do a lot of communication. So I help companies tell their story. So what I'll do is I'll go in and figure out like, you're, a major. Let's go with something that's not a major corporation. You are a company that is using low Earth orbit to help sell. No, that's too complicated. Hold on, I'm trying to dumb this down.
A nonprofit that grants out to the Jewish community?
Thank you. This is where I want to do something more fun like this. So I was going with like quantum computing, and I didn't want to go down that path. With that, you go, okay, let's take what is your current narrative and your storyline, who are you trying to reach, why, how, and you really just go through and like completely plan a process. It's really hard to put this into 5 minutes, and so I had to just go super high level. But tactically speaking, this is where the fun part comes in, because it's super simple. It's just about doing the work and finding the audience and the people that you want to talk to, and then looking at what's being said and how you can insert yourself in. It's all about what's not being said. If something's already been written, the news is out, right? What's not there is actually what you want to write about and try to capitalize on, but not necessarily do it in a bad way, in a way that's going to be effective and help change the perception for whoever you're trying to convince to either help, give you money or provide grant money or something like that, or come in and join a community, something of that nature. So, and yours is very local, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else can I help you answer?
You're looking for a job.
What?
Said, are you looking for a job?
No.
what's your favorite kind of stories you tell?
Ones that change perception, ones that help people actually change their behavior. There's a lot of companies that I've worked with where it's a product or selling a product or raising awareness for something, which is wonderful, but when you're able to actually change people's minds about like global warming or something that maybe they didn't know before, and there's an aha moment, and you hear that after the fact and after you land a story and after you talk to a journalist about something and convince them to write it, those are my favorite. They're more of the feel-good stories that maybe don't get as much, you don't get paid as much or whatever. They're like actually the ones that matter and are really changing the tide. So, yeah.
What do you think sloppy storytelling looks like?
Sloppy storytelling, not researched. Really, what's happening right now in the state of journalism and in general, and if anyone's a journalist, I love all journalists, I'm just saying like right now, there is a need to make money, and that's becoming really clear because a lot of things are being produced and they're not being produced well. And so instead of maybe being long-form journalism or something that's more researched, even if it's concise and it's 500 words, it's just not either well thought out and the thought isn't complete, or there's actually inaccurate information. And then also just fake news, and that's just a whole other, not sloppy, just horrible. So.
Are you hiring?
Oh, am I?
Are you hiring?
I don't understand.
She asked if
Oh, am I hiring?
I didn't ask.
I have
I was like, who asked that?
It was just the zeitgeist of the
Subliminal.
when pitching a story, how do you go about not giving or like not oversharing information?
Ah, yes. You got into the hard one. This is the good one. No, it's good. When you're pitching something, you have to tread this line between what, if you're working with a client or a company, what you're able to say, whether if it's public consumption or not, and what you're going to say and maybe not tell your client you're going to tell them that you're saying in order to get someone to talk to you. Because a lot of times the hope is that you can actually convince someone that is, let's say they're a really well-known reporter at the New York Times, and you really want them to just talk to who you're representing to help change opinions, but they don't necessarily understand like what you're saying, is you can kind of give a little bit more than you think, but if it's something that's illegal, then you can't. I know this is really hard to explain conceptually,
Grasp me.
a little bit. I want to explain this a little better, so let's talk about it later. Okay.
Two questions. First, I heard a lot of laughing to the "Are you hiring?" question, but I didn't actually hear an answer.
Oh, I don't make those decisions.
This is a good answer. A somewhat more practical one. How do you do a leak?
Oh. I'll just say first, I'm not a fan of them. Second, you have to find the right sources and trusted sources in order to do it. It's more about trusted sources and letting the right people know at the right time. And I realize what I'm saying sounds super ambiguous, most of what I'm saying, and that's because it's such a weird gray business.
Let's say you write a well-researched story. Someone approaches you with a question you don't know an answer to. How do you answer without saying, like, pretty much how do you say I don't know the answer to that question without losing credibility?
Sure, yeah, a lot of times people want to say no comment, which you don't typically want to say,
Okay.
but you can just deflect
Okay.
and use, it depends on the communication style you like to take. Some people are really direct, and some people just say, I can't answer that right now, or I don't have that information when we get back to you. Those are ways to go about doing it. Or you could just take a strategy of saying, I don't know. I mean, it really depends. It is completely dependent on your style. Everyone has a different style. Some people are really conservative, other people are liberal. Some people are, shady, other people are really not. So it's very much on that spectrum of
Cool.
what type of person you're.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess, how do you deal with like exaggeration to the point of like catching attention? Is that another kind of like
It's a tactic for sure.
personal thing? I mean, because I am sort of in that world, in that early stage stuff is not really proven, and so you actually don't know what you're going to do. But I hear exaggeration all the time.
With news.
With new,
We're
no,
gonna
like,
change.
let's say a product, let's just use a product as, like, you haven't even necessarily built it, or you're in early stages of building a product, but you have to tell a story when you don't even actually know that you're gonna be able to pull that shit off.
Yeah, no, so this is actually a really good question. This is like the typical conundrum.
With only
Oh, yeah.
$500 million, it will exist.
This is a really good question. It's the complete in-house conundrum of like communications marketing department and product engineering folks, and they're like, why are you saying this and we can't say this yet? And these people are saying we need to say this, and the CEO is like, we have to do this because we need to make money or whatever it is. So you have this like tension, and it's a great question because there's this like, there's kind of going back and forth to figure out what you can say to help incite interest in what you're building while not lying. And that is the key, is that you don't want to do that. And that's a good person in this realm is going to be like, well, can this eventually happen?
Right.
So you tell a story to get people interested, but you don't lie about it, and you have a more inspiration that will help people like come in and want to go to your website or whatever the call to action is. But you really want to know that line carefully, and the biggest piece is actually having that dialogue in-house, so that's never going to, or hopefully you don't run into a lot of problems that sometimes you see come out in the news where people didn't do that talking. Does that help?
No,
make
yeah,
sense?
I mean,
But it is
seems
certainly
very
like
complicated
a complicated,
Yeah.
and there's always like, a bit of that with those two groups, so.
What kinds of stories have you seen or experienced on the receiving side recently that made you forget you were being sold a story? Whether it be theater or journalism or whatever. Like, as somebody who is really
Okay,
experienced.
I've got it.
Sweet.
It's a yes and a no. Okay. I actually read it this week. Last year I had an opportunity to do something called citizen science. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. I was really excited about it. I've noticed that none of these main top tier publications had written about it. And I just saw it come out in the Times like this week. If it wasn't, I mean, you just asked me this question. if it wasn't me, I would have not known that that was selling to me, and they were trying to get me to go on these like really expensive trips to go, you know, scuba diving or whatever. But at the same time, it's like it made me happy that I knew that they were selling to me. So in a sense, I think I kind of like anti-asked or like answered your question. But that would be one. That's a good question though. Let me think a little bit more on it. See, that was a tactic.
And we got time for about one more question.
Yeah. We'll do two.
About one. Two is about one.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this is more specific, but say like you have a story that you wanted to tell that was in response to a sort of I'm just going to use an example. So I work in lab animal medicine. I'm a veterinarian, and a lot of times we get these animal rights groups who kind of twist facts to tell their story. How do you tell us your side of the story or the fact without sounding like you're defensive or you're being, you know, shady because, you know, this group is obviously has an agenda and already has, you know, put stuff out there that is going to pull on people's heartstrings.
Sure.
You know.
And that's exactly what this whole presentation was about. Depending on your agenda, you're able to do that, which is great or horrible, and it depends on where you're at and what you're representing. What you just described is a particular group of people that is going to use pulling on heartstrings as a tactic in order to change your, you know, people's opinions. Where I've seen the most success is when organizations come together and provide what they're providing of value, and they're not defensive at all. And you just show what you're doing, and you are more of like taking a step above, as opposed to kind of going down to a level that is going to actually just get you more into the weeds of the conversation. And so you usually just want to see what the conversation flow is and what's being said and see if it makes sense for you to engage in that. It sounds like maybe not. Or if you just say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why, and this is how it's helping, and you just lay that out. That's typically the best response for something like that. But they always change depending on, you know, the organizations. There's one more.
Do you have any experience reaching out and sharing your story with influencers or with astroturfing, and how does that compare to like reaching out to journalists?
Yeah.
What's
So
astroturfing?
Like basically using a bunch of planted accounts or fake accounts to make it seem like lots of people are saying the same thing.
I have not done anything with astroturfing. Influencers, in my opinion, is a catch-all term that means nothing.
Well, like,
but
you know, people
your
who
purpose
share
of your-
stuff on social media that
Totally.
are not professional journalists.
Yeah. For those types of people, yeah. It's the same tactic. Typically, you want to be a little more calculated with what is still deemed to be a journalist, but right now the word journalist, unfortunately in my opinion, is starting to meld into influencer,
Yeah.
when really you do have, you know, institutions that are gaining more and more trust, especially with fake news happening, that are going to continue to be journalists. But when you're doing outreach to an influencer, depending on if you have to pay them money or not, which is sometimes one of those things, yes, I have experience with it, but it's much more about leveraging their channels for your intent, and hopefully that intent is a good one. Because there are, in any of these ecosystems, positive, negative kind of people. But astroturfing, no. I wouldn't. There are things you don't mess with them. It's straight. So.
Hey, big hand for Angela.